So every year at Woman Evolve, we start the year off with a theme. And this year, our theme is Go Rogue. We are encouraging women to break out of patterns and systems that no longer fit who they are. And I am wondering at this stage of your life, what does it mean for you to go rogue?
Wow. Well, I would say that last year I felt I was living a lot in the questions. And this year I'm in pursuit of answers. That's it. Like
Mm.
there is grace to be had to be exercised when you don't know which path to take, when you're uncertain, when there are many paths revealing themselves to you. Um, and then there's a time for action. And I feel like this year has been about pursuit of answers and taking action.
That's so good. I feel like in order to be on the pursuit of answers, that there's also this like recognition that you can't be afraid of failure or not getting the answers. Is that true for you?
Absolutely. It's you put one foot in front of the other and you learn as you go. I think for me to have gotten to this point, it took a lot of sitting still, which is very hard to do. Just to hear your inner navigator, to hear your intuition speak, because I feel like the intuitive voice is very quiet. Uh, and so you need to be still in order to hear it. And then once you have a gauge of just even a mild sense of what your true north is, it's important to take steps, I think, in order to see whether, in order to figure out how you're going to get to where you're going. And yes, that means embracing that fear will always be a factor and that you have to take action in spite of it, and yeah, have courage that if there if you err along the way, it's all part of a part of what of equipping yourself for the journey ahead. That's the attitude that I am approaching 2026 with.
Do you mind unpacking a little bit what you decided to do for your birthday that has led us to even having this conversation today?
It was 2026 when I decided for my birthday I was going to reveal an image of how many fibroids I have to date. I've been on a mission to change how we perceive fibroids, to give them the attention and the gravitas they deserve. So this month, March, which is my birthday month, we launched a campaign called Make Fibroids Count, which is a fundraising campaign to raise money for research into non-invasive and less invasive ways to deal with fibroids. And so for my birthday, I released a photo of myself holding 77 a fruit with I mean a basket of fruit with 77 fruits in it, signifying the 77 fibroids that I know I've had to date. And along with that, I also released an MRI image of my fibroids because I wanted to offer both an artistic representation of the invisible fruit we carry, but
Mm.
also give it the gravitas of what it actually looks like to bear these things in your body that science still so little understands, in order to create the urgency that I feel the subject deserves for us to do something about an issue that is affecting 80% of women.
That's so beautiful when I think about it being Women's History Month and just the significance of releasing your story and this imagery around your birthday. I'm just reminded of the history of women's health and how we aren't often centered in conversations that may be relevant and prevalent in many of our communities. And it's taken what I would imagine a lot of courage in order for you to do this. Can you talk a little bit, I guess, about your journey and how you came to a place where you began to get help and to do research to understand what was taking place in your body?
Yeah, so my journey with fibroids started in 2014, which was the year that I won an Academy Award. So it was a very, very
Wow.
big year in my life. A lot of positive change was happening. But at the time when I was experiencing such a career high in my personal life, I had been diagnosed with fibroids, and I was facing a threat to my reproductive system. And at the time, I really didn't know much about fibroids. Yes, I'd heard about it. Oh, an auntie had it, or something like that. But like, it wasn't anything that had been presented to me as something that I should look out for, or something that I should know much about. And so when I asked my doctors, what is this and what causes fibroids, they really couldn't give me an answer. They said, we don't have enough research to know what causes fibroids, but we do know that they thrive in a body that is estrogen dominant. And then I asked, okay, why is my body estrogen dominant? No clear answers. And at the time, just for people who don't know, fibroids are non-cancerous tumors that grow in and around your uterus, and they can cause lots of different symptoms. Some people don't even know they have fibroids. Other people experience heavy bleeding, clotting, pelvic pain, anemia, a lot of pressure in your abdomen area, among other things, back pain, you name it. So, and it affects 80% of women by the age of 50 in this country. So when I asked what I could do about this, I was given two options: surgery, invasive surgery, or living with the pain. And at the time, I chose the surgery, and they took out 23 fibroids. And then, as I was recovering, I said to my doctor, okay, so what can I do to make sure that these fibroids don't come back? And I was told, really nothing. It's just a matter of time. If your body is prone to fibroids, it's just a matter of time. And now I've come to learn that about 50% of women who get these surgeries end up having a recurrence in 1 to 10 years. So I was shocked about how little the medical world could help me, could equip me with a way to protect myself from these growths. But I went on with my life. And then 10 years later, mind you, I've been checked every year and I'm told, oh, there's one or two that's negligible. 10 years later, I get the news that I have over 50 fibroids now. And if I want relief, I'm given the same options: surgery or live with the pain. And so while my fibroid burden had changed over the 10 years, the options given to me had not. And that's when I grew angry, and I was hurt, I was angry, and I was frustrated and confused. And I said, okay, enough is enough. This is not okay. When I asked about, what's happening, like, why is there no advancements? And really, it's because there's not enough money going into researching the female body and issues that specifically concern the female body. And fibroids are such an issue. They only affect the female body. And so, at that point, I started talking more. I started talking to my family. I learned that so many of my family members have fibroids, and that indeed there is a correlation. If you have fibroids in your family, this is a genetic issue. If you have fibroids in your family, chances are you could get fibroids. And then I started talking to my friends, and my friends, I found out so many of them had fibroids. And so that abstract 80% of women will have fibroids by age 50 became real, because now I could see I knew the names and the faces of people dealing with it. But what surprised me about talking about it was a lot of the time the attitude was like, oh, please, girl, I have them too, very casually. And it didn't really match the experience that I was having in my body. And what I've come to understand is that as women, we are conditioned to normalize pain because we are dealing with a medical industry that has not prioritized our relief. And so from a very young age, you're informed that you're going to have a period and your life is going to be miserable once a month, and you just have to get on with it. And so I think that was where this attitude was coming along, because when you're going in for checkups and you're being told you have fibroids, and the message is that they're normal, you start to take it lightly, or you don't give it the seriousness that it deserves. And so where I've come to is a place where I'm like, just because fibroids are common does not make them normal, and we need to
Mm.
differentiate between the two. So I was emboldened by my community, speaking to people and commiserating with people who were going through it with me. And that's the point at which I decided, you know what, I want to be a part of the change I want to see. I want to join forces and lock arms with women and people who are concerned about this, who have been fighting the good fight to get this disease and this condition taken seriously by the medical industry. And I want to be a part of the change. So that's when I decided to go public with my story, and I joined forces with the Foundation for Women's Health to set up this grant, which is one step, it's hopefully one or a couple of steps towards having more solutions for women rather than just cutting them open.
I love that so much. One, that you are pressing up against something that I believe is necessary for a lot of women, is that we just begin to exist and function living with the pain and feeling
Hmm.
like there's just nothing we can do about it. So we might as well accept it. And I love this idea of you challenging us to not just advocate for our health and to advocate for other people to take our health seriously, but for us ourselves to not become comfortable living with conditions and pain that alter our way of life. I have some friends who also have fibroids, and this literally, it alters the way that you show up in your life. It changes. A normal day can go from just being regular to you needing to shift your plans in order to accommodate the pain that you may be living in. Can you talk a little bit about just the lived reality of having fibroids and how dangerous it is for us to normalize this type of pain and adjust our lives to fit this condition?
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is that I don't even know when my symptoms started because, like I said, I was taught that
Yeah.
to be a woman is to suffer. So when my period started growing longer in my early 20s, I didn't think much about it. When I started heavy clotting, and I'm talking like an acceptable size clot uh, during your cycle should be no more than a penny size, right?
Mm.
So anything larger than that should cause alarm. But like I had more clotting. I didn't think anything of it. I just took it in stride. And then so it was years, probably years. And they say on average, it takes a woman it takes 3.5 years for a woman having symptoms to get diagnosed with fibroids. So there's a lot of delay in diagnosing it. So for me, at the point at which I sounded the alarm and said, "Okay, enough is enough. Something is wrong." I was experiencing extremely long and heavy bleeding. Had been pre-anemic, and my GP kept telling me, "Oh, you're pre-anemic. Take this iron supplement," but not again. There was no linkage to checking for fibroids. So I had been pre-anemic for a while, so that comes with a lot of exhaustion. I was experiencing pain like cramps, but again, I just chalked it up to being a woman. And I had this like biting pain sometimes, but it wasn't until all these things were unbearable and happening at once that I said to my OBGYN, something is wrong. And when I said that, at first, she dismissed it. And then I came back and I doubled down. I said, something is wrong. And she did a pelvic exam and then sent me for an ultrasound, which is the first way to see if a woman, to detect fibroids. And so I did that. And then after that, I was sent for an MRI, which gives you even more information. Yes, and it confirmed that I had fibroids, but I cannot say to you how long I had been suffering. It had just gotten to a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. Uh, and I finally spoke up for myself.
I'm curious in your process of going on this journey and then even beginning to do the research and locking arms with people who are already doing the work, is there anything that you have learned about having fibroids that you didn't know beforehand that you think would be instrumental or critical for other women to know or take note of?
Oh my goodness. How much time do we have? Well, the first thing was that, like, there's the fact that fibroids thrive in an estrogen dominant body. And now there's different ways in which you can be estrogen dominant. You can either be producing more estrogen than you need, or your body could be having trouble flushing out the estrogen
Mm.
you produce. I am the latter. My body is not adept at flushing out the estrogen. There's ways in which you can mitigate that with your diet, inflammation. Fibroids love inflammation, so if you have an inflammatory diet, that can exacerbate your symptoms and can affect the growth of your fibroids. So you can look into anti-inflammatory diets, and that's quite helpful. But on a more direct level, I learned that there have been some studies, some very reputable and reliable studies that have proven that green tea extract is a helpful supplement. And I say all this with the disclaimer that I am not a doctor, and I would encourage everyone to seek the health advice from actual practitioners of this. But green tea extract is a great supplement that can help to slow down the growth because it starves the fibroids. This is my layman's way of saying it. And vitamin D is also a very big contributor to the balance that allows for the body to fight fibroids. Now, a lot of so I've also learned how Black women are disproportionately more affected by fibroids. This means that we get them earlier, we get more of them, we experience more severe symptoms, and we're 2 to 3 times more likely to need surgical intervention, and I believe 7 times more likely to be recommended a hysterectomy. So we
Wow.
are disadvantaged. They do not know why, but that is the state of affairs. It's also known that a lot of Black women have vitamin D deficiency. I think vitamin
Yes.
D deficiency is an issue all around, but for Black women, it is definitely more rampant. So to me, it makes sense. Like, the fibroid burden would match sort of the vitamin D deprivation. So getting on a protocol of vitamin D supplements and getting as much sunshine as possible has been something that I've done, that I try to do. And iron, iron, iron. Your liver needs iron in order to be able to properly balance your hormones. So if you have iron issues, it's another contributor to unfortunate an environment that promotes or is rife for fibers to grow in. So figuring out what your iron levels is also going to be helpful. And if you are deficient in iron, finding the help you need to get the supplementation, the prescription to help with that is also meaningful. So that's what I have done, and these are not cures by
Right.
any stretch of the imagination, but they're the things that I have learned, the true tools, practical things that have made me feel less helpless.
Now, Lupita, I know you said you aren't a doctor, but you have said something to me today. Now, girl, all my life they didn't told me I was low on iron, but the iron helping the liver to balance the hormones, you have said something to me today. I think so many women have heard like you're anemic, and like, okay, well, I'm gonna take some iron, I'm gonna eat some steak, but like what why do I need the iron, Lupita? You might not be a doctor, but you could play one on TV the way you're out here
That's what
giving
I
the
want to do.
information.
That is the kind of doctor I want to be, the one on TV.
I do want to ask you because when I think about our audience, we're talking talking about women who are predominantly Black women who probably, if themselves have not been impacted by fibroids, know enough women who have been impacted by fibroids or just other symptoms that we've just come to live with. And they're
Mm-hmm.
maybe not going to experience the sense of urgency that they need to because they have been living with it for so long. Their grandmothers lived with it, their aunties lived with it. I want you to talk a little bit about the way that your life changed as a result of just addressing the fibroids, maybe the first time or the second time. Like, how did your quality of life change after you had an opportunity to have relief for those windows? Because I'm hoping that we can begin to really create a hunger for women to understand that they could live healthier lives, that they could live lives that maybe aren't as complicated as a result of really joining arms to help us get the research we need to change the lives of ourselves and the generations that are to come from us as well.
Boy, oh boy. So first I'll say that I still have fibroids, and I am at a point where I am actively needing to decide whether to go the route of another surgery
Okay.
or to just live with the pain. I
Mm.
haven't been willing to do it because the first surgery was hard,
Mm.
and it is I just I it's not something I would do casually. It's
Yeah.
very invasive. They cut through your muscle tissue. Now listen, it's very effective. And after my surgery, I felt lighter, like literally lighter, because I wasn't carrying. I think at the time they took the 23 fibroids were quite weighty. I can't remember how much they weighed, but it was significant to get that burden out of my body. And the recovery was it was tough, but it did happen, and I don't regret doing it. But I am very cautious about doing it again because every time you have a
Yeah.
surgery, it actually jeopardizes your reproductive potential. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I was actually having a conversation with my surgeon recently about, okay, should I or should I not do the surgery? With the idea that, I want to preserve my reproductive potential. And his point was that we don't know enough in order to be able to guarantee you that the surgery will do the trick for you to be able to one day have a baby. For some people, it does work, and it's almost 50-50. Some people, the outcomes are such that they cannot after the surgery. And for another 50%, it actually is the thing they needed to do in order to gain back their reproductive health. So, it's a toss up.
Yeah.
It's a risk you take, and so this is why I am so passionate about finding solutions that don't necessarily involve that
Yeah.
invasive surgery. Another thing that I've learned of since I went public with this and started to do this advocacy work is how prevalent hysterectomies are. There
Yeah.
have been women in my comments on Instagram and Facebook. One woman I remember, she told me that she had a hysterectomy in her early 20s
Yeah.
because that was the only option given to her. And I've heard that from countless women. They go in with fibroids and their doctor recommends a hysterectomy and they don't know that there's any other options. And so they lose their reproductive organs. And I think that is a travesty for us to be losing our whole reproductive organs as a first resort. you
Yeah.
know there's definitely a time when that might be necessary, but surely it shouldn't be our first resort, because that to me is like having a cavity and taking out all your teeth. It's too severe an option for it to be the first one. So I don't even remember your question. But yeah, I would say that I'm still very much, I encourage, what I am encouraging is really that we know our bodies and that we understand our family history, you know,
Mm.
and that we equip ourselves with this. We know the symptoms to look for in order to be able to go and advocate for ourselves in a medical system that is not ready to
Yeah.
give us the tools. And the reason is because that medical system itself also has to be educated about fibroids, about there needs to be better sensitization of doctors in medical school about the protocols for dealing with fibroids. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen on a lot of levels. But right now, for the women who might be facing this, I say, pay attention to your body, speak to your family, make sure you understand your family history, and then go in there and advocate for yourself to get the options. There are options out there beyond a hysterectomy. So definitely don't allow that to be the only option given to you. Uh, and yeah, that would be my advice.
I think, another thing that you mentioned that I hope that people will take away from this conversation is just the willingness to have conversations about things that concern our body. Like you, many women have been conditioned to believe that beauty is pain, being a woman has pain connected to it, and we have accepted existences of pain that don't necessarily have to be our destiny, even if they were the history of the women who came before us. And I am
Mm-hmm.
encouraged by us just having normal conversations about our periods and our cycles and not treating it as if it is something that is taboo, because it is possible that someone does have a condition, but because we have made it so abnormal to have these types of conversations that they're dealing and suffering in pain, when even just knowing from another woman, it doesn't have to be that way, or there are tools can be helpful. I believe that that's the power of community, is that we're able to determine what's normal, what's not, and then what tools and resources have you had access to that could help me as well. And so if you're listening to this, please just be mindful of the types of conversations we can be having as women to help bring awareness even amongst ourselves, as we also seek to break down systems that have often marginalized or left us ignored in our issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is so key. Our silence only breeds pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something that I would like to ask you. I know we're about to wrap up, but I'm wondering, as you consider what perseverance looks like in this field, where we know that medical research can take time, and that in your pursuit of answers, that there are some answers that we have to journey in order to get the answer for. What does it look like for you to have perseverance at this season of your life?
Ooh, what does it look like for me to have perseverance at this season of my life? Ah, I think perseverance means, for me, it is accepting that I am not always strong, that
Hmm.
sometimes, all the time, I'm human. And that comes with some porousness, it comes with some tender spots, and embracing myself in those moments when I feel tender and allowing myself to retreat and curl up and have a good cry is
Yeah.
part of perseverance. You can't be in fight mode all the time. You can't be in action mode all the time. And so it's important to recognize the vulnerability of being human,
Wow.
and embrace it. This work for me has been so vulnerable to talk about it
Yeah.
openly. It's not easy, but it's also been so empowering, you know? It definitely beats being quiet about it and dealing with it on my own, because I have gotten the bolstering of people I don't even know, you know. And when I hear the stories, stories heal you. When you share your story, you heal.
Yes.
When you hear a story, you heal. So being able to hear women stories that are where I am, have been where I am, there's something that makes it feel less, less, less insurmountable, you know,
Mm.
because I know I am not alone. And so though I may be leading with my single story, I know that it is reverberating and that I am being mirrored over and over again by so many women who are experiencing versions of this, some way more severe than my experience. So yeah, I feel empowered by my vulnerability. It is my
Yeah.
fuel. It is my engine.
You know, I think the paradox of perseverance and vulnerability living in the same place is one of the things that's going to stick with me as we as I marinate on this conversation, because I think I, like so many women, have begun to believe that perseverance means being strong all of the time. But what if the refueling is in the vulnerability? Maybe the perseverance runs out in isolation, but through
Mm-hmm.
connection, through honesty, we are refueled for the mission. And I'm just so grateful for you answering the call to this. In a different way, I've had to share my story, a story that no one would have to know unless I had to tell it. And I can imagine, because of the platform and the influence in the audience that you have been fortunate enough to amass, that you could have kept yourself guarded and walled up, but to say, I'm going to be seen fully, and to allow what's happening in my life to be impactful for other people, I think is just an incredible, courageous act that I know for sure is pushing the ball forward and helping us to get some of the answers that we need. So thank you. Thank you for your yes.
Oh, thank you so much. And it means a lot to me to be able to share, and especially in this kind of way. This feels very intimate and patient. You know, it's like a nice slow burn conversation. So it feels very comforting to share it in this way. And yeah.
So someone's listening right now and okay, they're engaged, they're a little bit more interested in not just living with the pain, they want to do something about it. They're borrowing from your courage. How can the women who are listening learn more about fibroids, but most importantly, what they can do to help fund some of the research that is needed so that we can live healthier, better lives?
Yes, the Make Fibroids Count campaign, fundraising campaign is going on right now on GoFundMe. And you can go to makefibroidscount.org and make your donation there. And that donation goes straight to research, funding scientific research into non invasive and less invasive ways to treat fibroids. So that is one way you can definitely participate. I wanted to make this a public campaign because I have felt very empowered by being able to be up to contribute to the solution I want to see. And I thought other women might feel the same, and the people who love them might feel the same. So if you want to feel like a part of the solution and actually be a part of it, please donate to makefibroidscount.org. And once you donate, you automatically you get on the list for all the updates on where the research is. The Foundation for Women's Health aims to do this research and make it available for people to actually gain from. So this is not just going to disappear into some
Mm.
scientific journal somewhere. We're really looking for practical ways to find better solutions for women.
That's great. Okay, before we go, because you was tearing up on me a little bit. We gotta leave on a high note. Okay, so I gotta ask you if you we're gonna do a little rapid fire question, if that's okay.
Great.
Okay, so what's something ordinary that you find beautiful?
Ooh, ooh, something ordinary that I find beautiful. Grass.
Ordinary. What does it? It's the green, the touch, the
Yeah.
feel.
The yes, the coverage, you know, when you see a
Mm,
beautiful grass pasture and it's just fully covered and it just looks like you perfect to take a siesta on.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
What is something you are surprisingly good at that has nothing to do with your career?
I can gleek. Do you know what that is?
No, ma'am.
That is spitting from under your tongue.
Lupita.
And this is what came to mind.
I have so many questions. I need another episode because who is calling it Gleek and how did you learn to do it?
I have no idea. Yeah. But that is a hidden skill of mine that now the world
Okay.
knows about.
Okay, stage acting or film acting?
Ooh, I can't choose. Both.
Ah, both. Okay.
Both.
City life or farm life?
Farm.
Really? Well, yeah, you like the grass. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
E-
Mm-hmm.
Early bird or night owl?
Both.
Both.
Unfortunately, I hate that about myself, but I am both.
Like you, why?
Because I just like can't wait to get back to my day. So I struggle to go to bed and then I spring out of bed. It's just, yeah, it's a constant battle.
I love that. Okay, and who's your person? Like the person who you can count on for whatever, whenever they're down.
Oh, my friend, well, they're down. My friend Sahim Ali.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, he's down
Okay.
for whatever.
I love that. I love that. Thank
Whatever
you.
I'm down for.
You and we need those people in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you so much for taking time to share with us about making fibroids count. We're going to make sure that our girls have all of the information to get plugged in. We're going to make a donation on behalf of Woman Evolve. I'm so grateful for the
Thank you.
work that you're doing and that we can get behind helping as many women as possible to live better, bolder lives. So thank you so much for your time and your work.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation.
My pleasure.